Alright, so for this week's $2 Tuesday tutorial, we're going to briefly discuss the shading of a sphere. Last week, we did the shading of a cone. This is all part of the AOH drawing method, where if you can draw the letters A, O, and H, you can draw a triangle, a circle, and a rectangle. If you can draw a triangle, a circle, and a rectangle, then you can draw a cone, a sphere, and a column. And if you can draw those shapes, then you can draw anything in the world. Tonight, we're going to discuss how to draw and how to shade a sphere. First off, what is a sphere? A sphere is a circle. It's a very round object. That is what a sphere is. I'm going to tip it up just a little bit so that you can see the edges. I may have to turn this other light over here back on just so that you can see it a little bit. All of its edges. There we go. I'll turn this so it's not quite so bright. There we go. Turn this so that it's even less so bright. Of course, the camera adjusts for that and makes it brighter. So here is, tell you what, let's turn this one all the way that way. And let's leave, yeah, that's what we want to do right there. Look, there's a sphere. It is a circle like the planets, or my head, or my belly, as the time may be. So here's what we need to see when we see the sphere. First off, what I want you to notice about this particular sphere is that it's styrofoam. And because it's styrofoam, it has a rough surface. And because it has a rough surface, the shadows on it, if you'll notice, you've got a very bright spot right here. You have transition, where it gets not so bright, not so bright, not so bright. Core shadow, I'm actually going to turn this further away. There we go. So we have very bright spot, not so bright, not so bright, not so bright. Core shadow. You have all this transition right here. And then you have this transition back here to the backlighting. And the backlighting is where the light from over here is bouncing off of stuff over here and reflecting back up on here. That's what makes it look round, because light bends around objects. We know this, our minds know this, and our mind expects to see it because we see it everywhere we look. In every object we look at, even on my hand, you can see the backlighting over here, where this light is bouncing off of stuff over here and reflecting back up on my hand. So regardless of what you're trying to draw, whatever you're trying to shade, you will have the light side, the shaded side, and the backlighting. The same is true. Let me get a smaller sphere. I think I have a smaller sphere. I do have a smaller sphere. The same thing can be said for the shadow beneath. If you look at the shadow behind it, you will notice there is a core shadow right here, just outside of it. There is a dark line right at the base of it. Then there's a brighter line where the light is reflecting. The light is coming off of that object, bending around, hitting this object, bouncing back up and hitting this object, and then bouncing back down to this object. So your light's going pew, 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 pew. And it's bouncing off here, backlighting this, and the reflection off of this is backlighting your shadow. So you have the darkest line right at the base of your object where absolutely no light is hitting. Then you have a brighter line where the reflective light is, and then you have the darker line, which is the reflection of your core shadow. Do you see it? It's hard to see. See if I can zoom in on it just a little bit. I can zoom in on it, but I can't focus. You can see this line right here is the darkest area. It's brighter here, and it's brighter still out here. And it will continue to get brighter the further away from the object you go. So that's how the shadows work. Because this is styrofoam, it's textured. That means because it's textured, the shadow transitions. It's got bright spot, not so bright, before you get to the dark side. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. And the reason that is because right about here, the texture itself starts casting shadows on the object. Right about here is where the shadow, the object is casting the shadow on itself. It's blocking the light off of itself. But here is where the texture is blocking the shadow, is blocking the light off of itself. If I were to go back to last week's object, which was a shiny cone, which is really a party hat that I have spray painted, what you will notice is the shadow is a hard line right there. Right there at the edge of the object. The shadow is a hard line right there. And down here, what I didn't point out last week, down here you have a reflection of the dark area over here. Just because of the way we have it lit right now. It's not true if you do that. Woohoo! It just gets more complicated, so we're going to stay with the simple stuff. Because this is shiny, because this is a smooth surface, the shadow is a hard line shadow. Because this has a rough surface, because it's styrofoam with a rough surface, you have a transition where the surface casts a shadow on itself. But what you should notice, what I want you to notice about this is, the bright spot is a circle. The cast shadow, or the core shadow is a circle. The transition area is a circle. The backlighting is a circle. The shadow, actually the shadow in this instance is an oval, but the lighting is still done the same. The shadow is an oval, the core shadow is an oval, the backlighting, the backlit shadow is an oval. I'm not going to go through all the basic names of shadows because quite frankly I forget those things on the fly, and you don't need to know them. All you need to see is how it's shaded. So let's draw one. Let's focus on drawing one.
Bright light, bright light, bright light.
Let us start with a circle. And what I like to do, and I don't know if I've ever pointed this out before, what I like to do is when I want to remember which direction the light is coming from, in our example, our light is coming from over there this time. So because our light is coming from over there, I like to take any kind of object and call it a sun and put it there. Wherever, if I wanted the light to be there, I would put that there to remind me where my light source is. If I wanted it up there, wherever I want my light source, I will put an object. I will designate an object as my light source. And I may be the only person on the planet that does this, but it works for me. I will designate an object as my light source and I will put it in a certain area. In this case, I'm going to put it in the direction of that lamp that's over there so that I can see where my light source is going to come from. That way I don't get confused because of this light over here that's brighter on my paper. So let's start with the basic mechanics of drawing a circle. The basic mechanics of drawing a circle is to draw a bunch of circles and then pick the lines that you like. That is the easiest way to get to a perfect circle. You just draw a bunch of circles, right? And then after you've drawn a bunch of circles, you pick the ones you like the most. Some people can just walk up to paper and draw a circle. And sometimes I can do that. But I will tell you, the truth of the matter is, if I want a perfect circle, if I absolutely have to have a perfect circle, I will put something down and make a mechanical circle. If I absolutely have to have a circle, I will put a perfect circle. I will put something down and make a perfect circle. In this instance, man, there was dirt in the bottom of that. In this instance, I don't have to have a perfect circle. So we're going to get as close to a perfect circle as we can without using a mechanical device such as a protractor, compass, or round object. Because really, this is just for informational purposes. So there's our circle, and it's not a bad circle. Pick out the lines you like. What I strongly suggest you don't do when you draw, and a lot of people do this, and you'll even see me do it every now and then, don't do this. Don't draw your lines like this. Don't do this. Get up there and draw a line. Draw a line. If you don't like it, redraw the line. If you don't like that, redraw the line. Figure out where you want your line, and then erase the lines you don't need. Use some tracing paper and eliminate the lines you don't need. Whatever you do, don't do this. It makes everything look hairy. So you've got your circle. And our light source is over there. So we're going to have a bright spot, which is going to be a circle. About the third the size of the circle that we're using. Now, last week during the cone, it was asked, is there a specific formula to remember? No, there's not really a specific formula to remember for anything else, but for a perfect sphere, I find it almost always works out this way. If you draw another circle right here that is about the size of that is about the third of that circle, and you draw another circle, and you draw another circle, and what you have is right here you find this transition area. Here's your shaded area. Here's your core shadow. By drawing those circles in, you make the Death Star. What? No, that's not what we're after. So let's start with our core shadow. Let's start with right here. Let's start with right here as our core shadow. And remember that our surface is rounded, so let's draw our contour lines in a circle in a rounded shape. Try to follow the rounded shape. Contour lines are the lines that follow the shape of your object. So let's try to follow the contour lines. Right here, everything would be straight, and it would go out just like you've seen on a globe. Just like you've seen on a globe. Right here where the lines are straight, and then they start to round out as you get further away. Right here the lines are straight, and then they start to round out the further you get away. Because our surface is rough, our texture starts shading itself over here somewhere. So let's color that in lightly. And then behind that you have your reflected light coming back in the other side. So let's color that in lightly. And then we're going to blend. And I like to scumble. First I like to just color over everything until I can see everything that I want to do. There are other ways to do this. I'm just showing you my way. I'm just showing you the way that I would do it. Because I think my way is very simple to remember, very easy to see. How my shadows follow the contour lines of the object, and then I try to blend them in so that it slowly transitions to the backlighted area. Lighter and lighter and lighter the further I get away from the core shadow. But you have to remember to shade this so that it is darker than your light spot. See what I did? I've got this dark shadow right here where the object itself is casting a shadow on itself. And then I have this light area, I have this transition area right here where the object texture is casting shadow on the body. And then I have that go up and fade out right around the bright spot. The same thing down here. I have my backlit shadow, but the texture won't let that transition solid, so you slowly transition from one to the other. And then you have underneath, you have your shadow underneath. You have the darkest, absolute darkest part of your shadow is right down here where absolutely no light is hitting. And then the reflection of your core shadow is across here, is your next darkest spot. And then your backlit shadow is there. I'm out of paper. I'm off the edge of the paper. So you see what I've done? Here's my absolute darkest spot. Transitions out to my backlit area. Transitions out to my core shadow, reflected. See how I've done that? Now if this were a mechanical metallic ball, you would start with your circle. You could do the exact same things. You're going to start with your circle, figure out where your bright spot is, figure out where your backlit spot is, but instead of transitioning, all you get is core shadow, backlit area because the reflected light is never going to be as bright as the bright light. But there's no transition. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. There's no transition because unlike this one, the surface area here is not casting a shadow on itself. Shiny things have stark shadows. Backlit area, not as bright as the foreground. Your shadow underneath, same thing, darkest spot directly underneath where the thing touches the ground. Backlit shadow, core shadow, rest of the object. And try your very best to blend those. Blend the shapes so that they make sense to the naked eye. Does that make sense? That is this week's $2 tutorial.